Hi, I'm George Callis, and you're watching This Sea Ranch Life. Today we'll be speaking with Menka Sethi. Menka is the new community manager here for the Sea Ranch. Let's hear what she has to say.
Today we are going to speak with Menka Sethi. Menka has just taken on the position of community manager here at Sea Ranch, and I've asked Menka to join us for 30 minutes or so to hear from her and learn a little bit more about her and hear what her thoughts are about the Sea Ranch. Hey, welcome, Menka. Glad to see you.
Thank you, George. Great to see you too.
Menka, let's start a little bit here. Let me back up a little bit. When you first threw your name in for consideration as the community manager, which would have been, what, several months ago, maybe?
Yep.
Yeah. And I guess the obvious question is what prompted you to do that?
I wanted to have local impact. We moved here a couple of years ago, and they're kiddos and have become more and more involved in the community. And the work I've been doing to date has been focused more on other areas. Worked out of the Bay Area, projects in California and Washington, Denver. And the more and more we spend time in the community, I think it became more and more important to me to contribute locally.
Oh, that's cool. So you submitted your resume and went through the process. And
I didn't have any expectations. Yeah, I just threw my resume in. I thought I had some relevant experience. Thought the role was incredibly fascinating and incredibly impactful, especially for where Sea Ranch has been, what we've gone through, and I think where we can go ahead. So I thought, why not try? And it worked out. I was delighted.
Wonderful. Fantastic. Let's talk a little bit about your resume, but your background and experience. And I know you've shared that. I've seen that, and it's rather extensive, I will say. So maybe without going into all your detail, kind of give us a neat overview of what your experience, what your background has been professionally.
I began as an architect, studying the Sea Ranch. I think I mentioned that, and it was in the announcement as well. And I, over time, went to get a business degree as well, and have really focused on starting my career building housing for families across the income spectrum. And using that skill set, have really been able to take on broader and broader roles, both in the leading teams and organizations and for-profit sector and not-for-profit sector, and roles that focus also on land use. Have really never left my passion for built environment, building community. Spent some time entitling projects in the coastal zone in Central California. Spent some time crafting local coastal plans in Southern California, so really well versed in what it means to exist in the coastal zone and work with all the various relevant regulatory bodies defining the regulations. And then kind of my roles grew in breadth, and was able to, again, keep the common thread has always been commitment to community and commitment to development of whether it's urban landscapes, rural landscapes in the coastal zone. I went to Facebook. I led their billion-dollar investments to solve the housing crisis, which was very visionary. We had some great impact. Really proud that about 3,000 people who did not have homes previously have homes now as a result of that work, and was able to grow breadth of experience from there, and lead companies in the climate tech space, lithium battery recycling, in the nonprofit space, agricultural land trust, which is a really interesting mechanism to preserve agriculture in perpetuity. Currently, I work for startup that's trying to decarbonize the built environment. So there's always kind of been this thread of like people and planet. And the cool part about this role that I think really triggered me is at the very start of developing housing for families in the Bay Area, I had to set up HOAs. And it's really fun to like, come full circle to take this role now managing an association. So yeah, it's funny how life works. It's really fun.
It is. That's a great breadth of experience, and it spans from land use planning through development, both from the nonprofit side and the corporate side. The Facebook experience, which was very well reported in the press when that initiative came out, and then your environment, your work for the environment, particularly as it relates to the built environment, and some of the mass timber work that you've been doing. That for our viewers who aren't aware, mass timber is what we used to call glue laminated timber. It's not exactly the same, but it's ways of using timber in a much more efficient way structurally, so that you can do more with it and have a more sustainable wooden structure, and in fact build even bigger wooden structures than were traditionally possible. So let's come back to that, to the motivation question. You wanted to help locally. Tie this in with just your personal, you have a family, you've got kids, and tie the motivation in with sort of your home, your personal life, and your hopes or thoughts there.
Sure. The decision to contribute locally was 100% tied to wanting to really be present here for my family. Our sons, attend Horicon Elementary School. I'm on the facilities committee there that was behind the Measure E passage. And I think taking this role furthers our commitment. We're living in Palo Alto in Silicon Valley, which was a wonderful place. And our children actually requested that we move here. It's a really beautiful story I tell from our 10-year-old at the time. Asked if he could go to the school in the country for 3 reasons. It was quiet, he could hear the ocean, and he could do a little writing. And for me, that just, I melted as a mom. It's really hard to say no to that. But I think it encapsulates how meaningful Sea Ranch is and how nurturing it is. And over time, we've been, as we've lived here, we've grown more and more. We've just been, embraced by the community, embraced by the nature. And I see this role as, continuing that commitment to really dive in and be present.
So you kind of got one of those rare occurrences in life, where your professional desires and objectives were a great matchup with your personal situation, your family and your Sea Ranch home. So I'd say you're pretty lucky that you can get both of those to click, right?
I feel blessed every day. I'm still pinching myself that this opportunity has surfaced in the Sea Ranch, and just being in the Sea Ranch. I mean, I distinctly remember it was last fall, we were at the Olson pool and our kids were swimming about, and it brought me back to architecture school at Carnegie Mellon. We were actually studying the structure, like the architecture of Olson pool, and the slide was still there at the time.
Yeah,
and it was just like deja vu. So for me to now be in this role for Sea Ranch that has, there's been a continuum throughout my experience personally and professionally. It is a dream. I'm incredibly fortunate. Will certainly not take it for granted, and do all that I can to, help the community thrive.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, I think many, as we're aware, many from the architecture and the design professions have come to Sea Ranch over the years and still are, and everything. And most everyone has their story of, their discovery of Sea Ranch years ago, generally in architecture or design curriculum, and when they first began exposed to Sea Ranch, even if they lived thousands of miles away. And so that's a neat. So you share that kind of that bit of history and that discovery of Sea Ranch from years back, and then continuing on to the present time. Now you're just having fun going to the Olson pool, but you're having fun on a variety of levels, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
And your kids are having fun at a kid level, at a child level,
Yes.
which is fantastic. Hey, let's talk a little bit about the CM role. It's I think there's some I find that there's some paradoxes inherent in the role, and I don't know if I want to pose those to you. One that I throw out is that the community manager, and that role is called different, that has different names in different communities and different organizations. But in California at HOAs, we call them community managers. Nonetheless, whatever the role is, there's similarities, and it's the top level of staff who are there to work under a board. One contrast is that a community manager's job is to fulfill and execute policy as defined by a board, as given by a board, which can put a community manager in an awkward position of having to carry out a policy that he or she may not be in agreement with. But the role is to ultimately execute a policy if a board has given clear direction. And sometimes you'll hear people, it's sort of like, well, I've got my orders, I got it. It's sort of like, well, any place. We've all been in jobs where we were given direction and instruction to do something, and we didn't really agree with it, but we said, if I'm gonna have this job, I'm gonna have to carry this out. We've all been in that situation. So that's sort of one end of the spectrum, is sort of the carrying out of direction as and policy is defined by the execution of policy. At the other end is more the shaping of policy, in the sense by influencing and guiding a board and developing a board. And certainly there is a role for the professional to help shape a board. A lot of times we have boards that don't function well, or have board members who have an incorrect view of what board service is or doing. So there's this need to kind of a guidance role, and for a board and for a community as a whole. So I see those sort of as possibly conflicting things. Do you want to, I've rambled on. Do you want to comment? Would you want to comment on that? So at one end is I take my orders. At the other end is I guide and shape. And both are true parts of it, but they don't. How do you see yourself doing that? How are you going to reconcile that whole spectrum?
I think it's a balancing act. I don't necessarily see it as either or.
Okay.
And first and foremost, I will say one of the key elements, I feel like, of an association and of the community manager is it is truly a role of service. And I think I really am energized by that. It's deeply personal. So it's service to the community, it's service to the board. The community elects the board. We see, the board as a voice of the members. So when the board sets the policy and the strategy, yes, that's what I have to carry forward. I think the way the policies and strategies are implemented has a lot of, breadth there and opportunity. So I see that as where there's a lot of nuance that can come into play. And in terms of guidance and community, I think the other piece is the CM role has a real opportunity to flesh out what are the voices, what are the various different viewpoints and interests within the members. So that there's always a back and a forth of, we elect the board, and then there's the CM, which has access to the members broadly as well. So it's always being able to elicit all the different viewpoints and then presenting those in a ways that the board can make the best informed decision. So I do think it's a bit of back and forth, and that presenting the breadth of the voices can then in and of itself provide a voice of perhaps guidance for consideration for the board that we elect.
You're almost suggesting, and I don't mean to put a word in your mouth. You're almost suggesting advocating the board you report to. Every community manager serves at the pleasure of the board, but you're suggesting that there's a bigger, maybe a more expanded role, that you're hearing the voices from the community, the members who aren't on the board. Obviously, they elected the board, but you're going to bring other ideas and at times, dare I say, advocate for other ideas that maybe a board hasn't thought about or considered. Would that be true?
Maybe not. I'm not sure if advocate is
Okay.
the role, but at least be on point to hear and seek out what the views of the members are and present that as a point of, a data point, a point of information, so that the board can consider it, so that the board is making really informed decisions. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think it's a way of informing. You're another. I think what you're saying, tell me if this is that you have maybe your finger on the pulse of the greater community, and that you're helping to inform the board of a lot of those ideas, opinions, desires, whatever, and helping to focus a board,
Exactly.
bring that into focus for a board.
Yes.
Is that fair? Okay.
That's fair.
Cool. Let me spring another dichotomy on you here. I'll call it for that and get your comments there. In a lot of ways, our CM, you, very soon, is a little bit like the mayor of a small town. It's true. I mean, the legalities of it are different because you aren't elected, but our board is elected. But it's, a little bit because you have responsibilities for the operational aspects of a community. And we've all heard this. Every mayor in America will tell you when you're mayor, there's two things you have to do: fill the potholes and get the garbage picked up.
Yeah.
And if you don't do those two things, any other great ideas that you have, in other words, it's making sure that the basics are done, which in a lot of our experiences, we want the potholes filled and we want our garbage, our recycling, our composting handled somehow. We don't want that. So there's that operation at one end, that operation side, making sure the stuff is happening and happening efficiently that it takes to run a community. Here's the dichotomy for me, is that's ultimately you're responsible for that as community manager. At the other hand, at the other side is this vision making, or this envisioning sort of role, and that's different. That's thinking about what could be. That's long term, long interest, involves strategic thinking, all those kinds of things. But often the operations side, getting the trash picked up, or in our case, keeping the swimming pools operating properly, right? Making sure the trails are managed well, resurfacing the streets which we own, all those things, keeping good quality water coming through the pipes, all of those things it takes to make a community can absorb every moment of your time, to the point where you just have no time to think about anything bigger, anything vision. So how do you see balancing those? Every individual is going to have their own, or if I portrayed it correctly.
I think that's an accurate portrayal. On the operations front, I don't want to underestimate the talent and commitment and impact of the staff that we have, and Warren and team have done a fantastic job, I think, of really stabilizing the staff and laying the groundwork for our path back to operational excellence. So I think part of that is really relying on the excellent people who are in the roles, doing the day-to-day work, making sure the water company is doing its work and the roads are not filled with potholes, exactly as you said, and the pools are pristine. So I think that is a piece of it, really partnering with and enabling staff to do its job well, to keep that, ship on the right track path. On the vision piece, that for me is something that is just incredibly exciting and energizing, especially, and it is one of the key reasons also that I threw myself into consideration for this role, because of the context we're operating in: climate change and water shortages, wildfires, and then the original principles of the Sea Ranch are perhaps far more relevant now than they were when Sea Ranch came into existence, and are going to, I think, be even more relevant as we move ahead in the climate change context. So part of this, the vision piece is, and again, it's not, I don't see it as the CM individually for sure. It's absolutely staff in partnership with the board and partnership with the members, really figuring out how is the Sea Ranch going to evolve to really rise and meet the challenges and make sure that our principles continue in the face of these really significant challenges that we have coming our way. So I think that's the vision piece. And the reason why it really excites me is, okay, yeah, on one hand, we have extreme challenges because of where we're located, because of the regulatory environment. And at the same point in time, and we have so many opportunities because of this like beautiful context of design principles that we've inherited from our founders. And I think a lot of communities and different viewpoints, certainly locally and much more broadly, look at the Sea Ranch as a way of the future. So I think capturing that vision and stepping into that alongside operational excellence, it will definitely be balancing. Operational excellence has to come first. It is truly a service organization. But it would, I think, really be selling ourselves short if we also didn't have an eye to the future on some of these visionary pieces. And I know a lot of strategy sessions have happened. People have put ideas out, members. I think there was 92 different ideas came out of the one workshop.
Yeah.
So there's lots of prioritization, but those type of processes I think are fun, beneficial, and in the long term, incredibly impactful to making sure that we're not so into the weeds that we haven't lost the broader context and respond.
Yeah. So I think what I'm hearing you saying is like fill the potholes, but dream about the dreams and in the future.
Yes.
How am I going to get to those dreams? Even though today I got to fill the potholes.
That's right. And really focusing on which dreams to pursue.
Right.
So if you pursue them all at one time, no go. Not much may get done.
Yeah, it won't happen. Yeah, focus is important, isn't it? I'm going to come back, slight change here too. You were talking about hearing from the community, and so that you can digest ideas and bring them into the mix and everything. But that involves you communicating with the community and the community being able to communicate with you. How do you see that happening? What do you we've got some things that we're all used to, but how will you approach that communication aspect?
Well, one of the venues I want to leverage now that we're a couple years down the road from the start of COVID is just like getting back out there and meeting people face to face, whether it's, having a town hall event more frequently, meeting people on, joining the already existing social functions. I see it as a little bit of both formal and informal. But I really want to meet people and shake hands, if that's acceptable in the health guidelines front still. Right. But then also there are the formal, I can't wait to get started on, the bulletin, the formal communications that Warren has really continued. I was actually, one of the board members gave me the compendium of Frank Bell's View from My Window, and I was going back and reading some of those type, and they're just so inspiring. It brought me back to something like Garrison Keillor, like Woe Begone, which is where I grew up in Minnesota. Garrison Keillor, I came from the same hometown that he did. So I see, those formal type of very contemplative communications as a piece in the mix, as well as out meeting people, getting feedback formally through whether it's, I think I mentioned the town halls, or if it's just out meeting and greeting. And then obviously I will have an email address and I hope people reach out. So I think it's a variety of different ways of engaging with the community as both the community manager role formally, but then also I'm I'm a resident of Sea Ranch. I'm also a neighbor, so I don't want to, lose that touch as well.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks. That's really good. And I think, and you're correct. We've had a pandemic for the last 2.5 years, where for most of that we could not physically meet, or we were not sure if it was safe to do so. So we didn't, or we were extremely cautious, and that meant it was very hard to interact with people. And we were, here we are with Zoom and other things. But you're right. Actually, that resonates with me. That sounds great. I'm going to throw out one last question, and then kind of let you kind of say what you want with it. This one's, this is the last two-ish years. I mean, we've had a pandemic. We had another individual as the community manager. We had a number of difficult issues to look at as a community. We had a lot going on, and a lot of it was bumpy and rough. And I think most people felt that way. Some people said it. Some people claim it was a time of division and tumult, and whichever words people want to use. Do you want to comment on that in any way, shape, or form? Comment on that whole period and kind of where we're at now.
Yeah, I think it would be hard to not comment on it, because it was a very visceral time frame, and there's still remnants of those feelings of the tumultuousness, and I think it has to be recognized what we've gone through. And I give a lot of credit to the current board and Warren and the staff, I think, for laying the groundwork for a path back to a more cohesive approach, climate, and rebuilding trust. I also think having the ability to meet a lot more face to face. We as humans aren't meant to be behind screens, I think, is going to be really helpful too. And my hope is to continue that path towards finding the common ground. I think the Sea Ranch has so much passion behind it and commitment to the founding principles. And yes, we each have our own nuanced views that don't always fully align with each other's, but at the end of the day, we're here because we love the Sea Ranch. Like, we love these broader principles. So my hope is we can continue on the path towards rebuilding trust among board, staff, community, all those three constituents, and myself as the CM, really enabling the communication between those three different constituencies so that we can more fully regain the trust and really come out of this cycle of tumultuousness so that we're on a path to stability. I think empathy will be really critical in this process. I think, again, Warren's done an incredible job to date on really listening. I'm going to be spending a lot of time listening and ensuring that people feel heard. And I hope that goes a long way, along with showing progress on the work that needs to be done. So all that together, I hope, continues the path out of the tumultuousness, so that we're stable, we have trust in place again, and we're not always going to agree, but we can disagree respectfully and we can hear each other. And I think if we can do that, I'm really hopeful that we have a really bright future ahead.
Menka, you made a statement. I was fortunate enough to be in one small part of your interview process, along with quite a number of other people. But you made one statement that really struck me. It's a very brief statement, and it was I'm paraphrasing you a bit, sort of your approach to when there was a difficult situation or a crisis, or somebody was having an issue about something, or an issue with you, or an issue with whoever, and you used the phrase, just two words that really struck me. You used the phrase empathy first. I was really struck by that. Would you say a little something about that?
Absolutely. There's incredible disarming power in putting yourself in the shoes of someone else, like actually taking the time to understand where someone is coming from. And it doesn't have to take long, but just that brief moment, I think, builds the ability to hear the other person, in a way that allows you to like get to trust and then have a productive conversation from that first. So it's always, again, trying to put myself in the shoes of another person to see the situation from, you know, their vantage point. I just feel like it's been a tool of mine in the past in overcoming, you know, division is a strong word, but it can be a difference in viewpoint, very small, very big, but it's been a common tool where you can come at least to have, you know, a path forward, even though you might not see eye to eye, and having a path forward in a way where both people come out feeling respected, heard, and that there's just a climate of trust.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Of course.
Menka, thanks so much. I appreciate your time, and I hope all the viewers will have gotten a better understanding of you and who you are. And I certainly wish you, I think all Sea Ranchers will join with me in wishing you an excellent start to your tenure and many long, fruitful months and years as our community manager. So we're excited. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you so much, George.
That's it for this Sea Ranch Life. We hope you've enjoyed it. Until next time, take care of yourself, and if you can, take care of someone else too.